My daughter called me. I'm getting married tomorrow. I withdrew all the money from your bank account. I deserve a perfect wedding. Don't come if you're going to make a scene. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just hung up the phone, placed it gently on my mahogany desk, and opened my laptop. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. I spent 30 years as a neurosurgeon. I have held human brains in my hands. I have made life or death decisions while standing in pools of blood. I learned a long time ago that panic is useless. Panic causes tremors, and in my line of work, a tremor kills. So, when my daughter Lily told me she had stolen my life savings, I didn't panic. I investigated. I logged into the bank portal. The screen loaded, stark and bright, in my dimly lit study. The balance, which yesterday had been $250,450, was now $0. A single transaction, processed 2 hours ago. Transfer to external account ending in 8,892. That account belonged to Caleb, my future son-in-law. I stared at the zero. That money wasn't just numbers on a screen, it was the Golden Years Fund. It was the money I had set aside for my own long-term care, so I would never be a burden to Lily. Ironically, I had added her name to the account 5 years ago, right after I retired. Just in case something happens to me, I had told her, handing her the debit card. This is for emergencies only, Lily. Life or death. Apparently to my daughter, a shortage of imported peonies and vintage champagne constituted a life or death emergency. I leaned back in my leather chair and closed my eyes. How did we get here? I remembered Lily as a child. She was soft, kind, the kind of girl who would cry if she stepped on a snail. But then came Instagram. Then came the obsession with aesthetics. And then came Caleb. Caleb entered our lives 2 years ago. He called himself a crypto visionary. I called him a patient. I had consulted on his case after a severe car accident. I saved his ability to walk. In return, he took my daughter and twisted her mind. He filled her head with delusions of grandeur. He convinced her that working a 9-to-5 job was for peasants, that they were destined for a life of luxury travel and passive income that, apparently, was now being funded by my retirement. My phone buzzed again. A text from Lily. Don't be mad, Mom. We'll pay you back once Caleb's investment matures next month. But tomorrow has to be perfect. The world is watching. Number wedding of the century. The world is watching. She meant her 50,000 followers. Strangers who didn't care if she lived or died, only that she looked expensive doing it. I felt a coldness settle in my chest. It was the same coldness I used to feel before scrubbing into the operating room. The detachment required to cut into someone you love, to save them. Or, in some cases, to realize they cannot be saved. I didn't text back. I didn't call the police. Not yet. Reporting a theft from a joint account is complicated. The police would say it's a civil matter. She had authorized access, ma'am. I knew the law. But I also knew human nature. If Caleb convinced her to drain the account today, it meant they were desperate. People don't steal $250,000 for flowers unless they are running from something or someone. I looked at the invitation sitting on the corner of my desk. The Grand Azure Resort, Saturday, 4 p.m. It was a 3-hour drive. Lily told me not to come if I was going to make a scene. I smiled. A thin, sharp smile that used to terrify the interns at the hospital. I won't make a scene, Lily, I whispered to the empty room. I picked up my phone and dialed the one number I knew would answer on the first ring. Silas, I said when my brother picked up. Vivian? It's midnight. Is everything okay? No. Lily just emptied the joint account. $250,000. She gave it to Caleb. Silence on the other end. Then, the sound of a match striking. Silas, retired military intelligence, never did anything without a cigarette in hand. "You want me to kill him?" Silas asked casually. "No," I said. "I want to know why he needed the money today. And I want you to meet me at the Grand Azure Resort tomorrow morning. Wear a suit. Vivian!" "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to a wedding," I said, standing up and smoothing my skirt. "And I need to verify the patient's condition before I operate." I arrived at the Grand Azure Resort at 3 p.m. The drive had taken 3 hours. Ample time for me to dissect my emotions, categorize them, and shut them away in a sterile mental box. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is a hot emotion. It clouds judgment. I was cold. I was operating at absolute zero. The resort was breathtaking. It perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean, a sprawling palace of white stone and glass. As the valet took my car keys, a sensible sedan that looked out of place among the Lamborghinis and Bentleys in the driveway, I saw the first sign of my money. The entrance was flanked by 2 massive arches of white peonies and orchids. I did the math instantly. Peonies were out of season. Importing them from Holland in this quantity? At least $30,000. Those weren't just flowers. Those were the hip replacement surgery I might need in 10 years. Those were the property taxes on my home. I walked into the lobby. Silas was waiting for me by a marble column. My brother looked exactly as he always did. A man who could blend into a brick wall. He wore a charcoal suit that was expensive but unmemorable. He was smoking a cigarette, ignoring the no smoking sign with the casual indifference of a man who used to interrogate warlords for a living. "You look nice, Viv," Silas said, crushing the cigarette into a potted palm as I approached. "Like a grieving widow." "I am grieving," I replied, adjusting my silk gloves. "I'm grieving the loss of my financial security." "I ran the background check on Caleb," Silas said, keeping his voice low. He handed me a folded piece of paper. "It's worse than we thought. He's not just a bad investor. He's underwater." "How deep?" "Mariana Trench deep. He owes $400,000 to a loan shark syndicate operating out of New Jersey. They gave him until Monday to pay up." I unfolded the paper. A mugshot stared back at me. A younger, less polished Caleb. Name, Caleb Reed. A.K.A. Caleb Vance. A.K.A. the Crypto King. Charges, wire fraud, Ponzi schemes, identity theft. "So," I whispered, the pieces clicking together like bones setting into place. "The wedding isn't a celebration. It's a laundering operation." "Bingo," Silas nodded. "They steal your $250,000. They use the wedding vendors who are likely shell companies or friends to wash the cash. They pay off the sharks, and then they disappear on their honeymoon to a country with non-extradition treaties." "Dubai?" I remembered Lily's text. Precisely. We walked toward the garden where the ceremony was to be held. The scene was obscene. There was a string quartet playing Vivaldi. There was a champagne tower 6 feet tall, filled with Dom Perignon. I saw guests, hundreds of them milling about. Most of them were strangers to me. Young, beautiful people with phones glued to their hands, live streaming the event. Lily's followers. They were drinking my retirement funds. They were eating canapes bought with my emergency medical savings. "Mom!" The voice cut through the music. Lily came running across the lawn. She looked stunning, I had to admit. Her dress was a Vera Wang custom, easily $15,000. Her hair was piled high, adorned with diamond clips, but her eyes were frantic. She stopped 3 feet away from me, her smile tight and brittle for the cameras. "You came," she hissed through her teeth while waving to a guest. I told you not to come if you were going to be weird. I'm not being weird, darling, I said, my voice smooth as silk. I'm being a mother. I wouldn't miss the most expensive day of your life. Caleb appeared beside her. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, but my surgeon's eyes saw what the cameras missed. He was sweating, profusely. His pupils were dilated. His hands, clutching a crystal flute of champagne, had a fine, rhythmic tremor. Withdrawal? No. Fear. Adrenaline. He was a man standing on a trapdoor. Vivian! Caleb boomed, forcing a laugh. He tried to hug me. I took a small step back. Caleb, you're perspiring. Are you unwell? Just nerves. He laughed, wiping his forehead. Big day. Huge day. Listen, about the bank situation. He leaned in close, his breath smelling of expensive scotch and desperation. It was a misunderstanding. The bank froze my assets because of a security glitch. I just borrowed the funds to cover the vendors so the wedding wouldn't be canceled. I'll wire it back on Monday. With interest. Triple interest. Triple interest, I repeated. That's a very generous return, Caleb. Almost too good to be true. I'm a wizard with numbers, Viv. You know that. I know you're a wizard, Caleb, I said, looking him dead in the eye. I'm just wondering what you're making disappear. He flinched. Just for a microsecond. But I saw it. Go get ready, you two, I said, waving them off. The world is watching, remember? They hurried away toward the bridal suite. He's terrified, Silas murmured, appearing at my elbow. He checked his phone 4 times while talking to you. He should be, I said. Silas, I need to know exactly where that money went. If he paid vendors, there are invoices. If he laundered it, there's a paper trail. I'm on it. I have a buddy in the FBI's cyber division who owes me a favor. Give me an hour. Silas vanished into the crowd. I decided to do some reconnaissance of my own. I made my way toward the bridal suite. It was a secluded bungalow at the edge of the property. I didn't go to the front door. I went around the back to the terrace. The French doors were slightly ajar to let in the sea breeze. I stood behind a thick curtain of ivy, completely hidden. Inside, the argument was already raging. You said she wouldn't come. That was Caleb. His voice was shrill, stripping away the confident baritone he used in public. I told her not to, Lily cried. But she's here. She's acting. Calm. It's creepy, Caleb. She's usually so controlling. Why is she just smiling? Who cares? Caleb snapped. The sound of glass shattering followed. He must have thrown his drink. Did the transfer go through to the Viper? I sent it an hour ago. Lily's voice trembled. All of it. The whole $250,000. Caleb, that was Mom's life savings. She's going to find out eventually. By the time she finds out, we'll be in Dubai. Caleb sneered. And honestly, who cares about her? She's an old hag, Lily. She sits on that pile of money like a dragon while we scrape by. She had her time. This is our time. But she's my mother. She's an ATM, Caleb shouted. That's all parents are good for. Listen to me. We get through the ceremony. We collect the cash gifts. There should be another $50,000 in the box from the guests. We take the red-eye flight tonight. Done. I stood there in the shadows, listening to my daughter whimper. I waited for her to defend me. I waited for her to say, No, Caleb, she saved your legs. She raised me alone. We can't do this. I held my breath. Okay. Lily sniffled finally. Okay. As long as we get away. I can't go back to being poor, Caleb. I can't. My followers, they think I'm royalty. You are royalty, babe. Caleb soothed her. And tonight, you get your crown. I exhaled. The tiny sliver of hope I had been holding on to, the hope that my daughter was a brainwashed victim, died right there on that terrace. She wasn't innocent. She was compliant. She was willing to bankrupt me, abandon me, and flee the country, all to maintain an illusion for strangers on the internet. I walked back to the main lawn. The guests were taking their seats. The sun was setting, casting a golden, romantic glow over the scene. It was the perfect setting for a tragedy. I sat down in the front row, reserved for mother of the bride. There was a name card on the seat. Vivian Cross. I pulled a pen from my purse. I flipped the card over. On the back, I wrote a single line. Diagnosis: malignant. Recommended treatment: total resection. I took out my phone and texted Julian Sterling, my shark of a lawyer. They confessed. The money is gone. Transferred to a third party. They plan to flee tonight. Julian's reply came 10 seconds later. I'm at the gate with the federal marshals. We need them to consummate the fraud before we move in. Let them sign the marriage license. Let them think they've won. Understood, I typed. I'll stall them with a toast. The music swelled. The guests stood up. Lily appeared at the top of the aisle. She looked like an angel, but I knew better. I wasn't seeing a bride. I was seeing a tumor, and I was the surgeon holding the scalpel. An hour later, I was standing on the balcony of the resort's private library. It was a secluded spot, away from the prying eyes of the influencers and the champagne-soaked guests. Silas returned. He didn't look happy. He handed me a tablet. On the screen was a complex web of bank transfers routed through 3 different countries. My contact at the bureau is fast. Silas grunted, lighting another cigarette. He traced the money, and it didn't go to the florist. It didn't go to the caterer. Silas pointed a calloused finger at the final destination account. It went to a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands called Viper Holdings. That's a front for the loan shark syndicate I told you about, the Jersey Boys. I stared at the screen. My $250,000 wasn't paying for peonies. It was paying for Caleb's life. So, the wedding is unpaid? I asked. Completely. Silas smirked without humor. The resort? The orchestra? The catering? Caleb paid the deposits with a credit card that maxed out this morning. The final balance is due at 6 p.m. today. Or the resort manager calls the cops. That's why they needed your cash so badly. They were robbing Peter to pay Paul, but Paul is a guy who breaks kneecaps. They are going to stiff the resort, I realized. They plan to be on a plane to Dubai before the manager runs the card for the final bill. Exactamundo. It's a classic, bust-out scheme. But here is the kicker, Viv. Since they used your money to pay off the loan shark, technically, they haven't committed theft against you in the eyes of the local cops. Joint account, remember? Lily had legal access. I know, I said, my voice cold. That's why I called a specialist. At that moment, the heavy oak doors of the library opened. A man walked in. He was in his early 40s, wearing a bespoke navy suit that cost more than Caleb's entire fraudulent existence. He carried a leather briefcase like it was a weapon case. Julian Sterling. He wasn't a family lawyer. He was a corporate litigator, a man who dismantled companies for breakfast. I had saved his daughter from a severe brain aneurysm 5 years ago. He had told me then, Dr. Cross, if you ever need someone buried legally speaking, call me. Dr. Cross, Julian said, taking my hand. His grip was firm, his eyes predatory. I got your text. I have the marshals on standby at the perimeter. Julian. I nodded. Silas says we have a problem with the charges. The joint account loophole. It's not a loophole, it's a hurdle, Julian corrected, placing his briefcase on the table. But hurdles are meant to be jumped. He pulled out a file. If Lily simply withdrew money she had access to, it's a civil dispute, boring, lengthy. you might never see a dime." He paused, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "However, if they use that money to facilitate a wire fraud scheme across state lines specifically, paying off an illegal gambling debt to a RICO-investigated syndicate, then it becomes a federal crime. Money laundering. But we need to prove intent," Silas noted. "Exactly," Julian said. "We need them to admit that the money wasn't for the wedding. We need them to lie on record." "How?" I asked. Julian pulled a document from his briefcase. It was bound in blue legal paper. "This," Julian said, "is a deed of gift. It's a trap. It states that you, Vivian Cross, are gifting them an additional $500,000 for a house down payment." I raised an eyebrow. "You're offering it. But there is a clause, a tiny, legally binding clause, on page 4. It requires them to certify under penalty of perjury that they have no outstanding debts greater than $10,000 and that they have not used any family funds for illicit activities." Julian tapped the paper. "If they sign this, 2 things happen. 1. They commit federal perjury because Caleb owes $400,000. 2. The document grants me, as the trustee, immediate power of attorney to audit their finances to secure the gift. That audit gives me the legal right to freeze the $250,000 they just stole before it leaves the Cayman holding account." "They have to sign it," I said. "And they will," Julian assured me. "Greed is their pathology. If you offer them $500,000, they won't read the fine print. They'll sign it in blood." "When do we do it?" Silas asked, checking his watch. "The reception," I decided. "During the toasts. I want them to think they've won. I want them high on adrenaline and champagne. That's when mistakes happen." "Perfect." Julian closed his briefcase. "I'll be waiting in the wings with the authorities. You just get the signature." I walked to the window and looked down at the lawn. The ceremony was about to begin. The guests were taking their seats. I saw Lily standing near the archway, adjusting her veil. She looked nervous. For a brief second, the mother in me wanted to run down there, grab her hand, and drag her away from Caleb, to scream, "Run, you idiot, run!" But then I remembered the text. The world is watching. She chose this stage. She chose this audience. Now, she was going to have to perform. "One more thing," I said, turning back to Silas and Julian. "What?" "The resort manager. Does he know his bill isn't getting paid?" "Not yet," Silas said. "Good. Find him. Tell him to bring the final invoice to the head table right after the toasts. Tell him the mother of the bride has a surprise announcement regarding the bill." Silas grinned, a wolfish expression. "You're wicked, Viv." "I'm a surgeon, Silas. Sometimes you have to stop the heart to fix the defect." I smoothed my dress and checked my reflection in the glass. The woman staring back at me didn't look like a victim. She looked like an executioner. "Let's go to a wedding," I said. I took my seat in the front row just as the music swelled. Canon in D. Cliché. Expensive. Lily walked down the aisle. As she passed me, she didn't look at me. Her eyes were fixed on Caleb at the altar. "But Caleb?" He winked. A cocky, arrogant wink that said, "I beat you. I took your money. I took your daughter, and there's nothing you can do about it." I smiled back. It was the same smile I gave patients right before the anesthesia kicked in. The smile that said, "You're going to sleep now, and when you wake up, everything will be different." The ceremony was a blur of hollow vows. "For richer or for poorer," Caleb said, his voice trembling slightly. "In sickness and in health," Lily whispered. I sat there, clutching my purse, where the deed of gift document lay waiting like a loaded gun. "Enjoy the moment, Caleb," I thought, because poorer is coming a lot faster than you think. As the officiant pronounced them man and wife, the crowd erupted in applause. Lily threw her arms up in victory. Caleb kissed her aggressively, playing to the cameras. They walked back down the aisle, showered in white rose petals. As they passed me, I stood up. "Congratulations!" I called out, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "I have a special wedding present for you. Meet me at the head table." Lily stopped, greed flickering in her eyes instantly. "A present?" she asked. "Something to help you start your new life." I patted my purse. "Something huge." Caleb's eyes widened. He licked his lips. The fish had seen the bait. Now, all I had to do was set the hook. The room went quiet as I approached the head table. I could feel the heat of the spotlights on my skin and the collective gaze of 200 guests and thousands of live stream viewers burning into my back. Caleb and Lily were seated on a raised dais like a king and queen holding court. But up close, the cracks in the kingdom were visible. Caleb's knuckles were white as he gripped the tablecloth. Lily's smile was trembling. I signaled for the music to fade. "I know I wasn't scheduled to speak," I said into the microphone, my voice steady and warm, a perfect imitation of a proud mother. "But weddings are about beginnings, and I wanted to give my daughter and her new husband a beginning worthy of their ambition." Lily's eyes widened. She leaned forward, her earlier hostility replaced by a hungry curiosity. "What is it, Mom?" she whispered, loud enough for the mic to pick up. I reached into my purse and pulled out the blue folder. "I know we had a disagreement yesterday about money," I said, addressing the room but looking directly at Caleb. I was hurt, but I realized $250,000 isn't enough to build the life you two dream of. A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. I opened the folder. "So, I have decided to gift you an additional $500,000 towards the purchase of your dream home." The silence that followed was absolute. Then, a gasp. Caleb stood up so fast, his chair scraped loudly against the floor. His eyes were practically vibrating. $500,000? He choked out. "Vivian, Mom, are you serious?" "Deadly serious," I smiled. "I want you to have stability. I want you to be secure." I placed the document on the table in front of them, right next to their untouched wedding cake. "However," I added, lowering my voice so only they and the nearby guests could hear, "my financial advisor insists on protocol. Since this is a substantial gift, I need to ensure it's protected from taxes and liabilities." I uncapped a heavy, expensive fountain pen and held it out to Caleb. "This acts as a solvency certification. It just states that you have no significant undisclosed debts, no pending legal issues, and that you are receiving this gift in good faith. Standard procedure." Caleb didn't look at the paper. He looked at the imaginary $500,000 floating in the air. He looked at his watch. It was 5:45 p.m. He had 15 minutes before the resort manager came for the final bill. If he signed this, he could show the proof of funds to the manager. He could delay the payment. He could leverage this document to borrow more money from his loan sharks. It was a lifeline. Or so he thought. "Of course!" Caleb laughed, snatching the pen. "Standard procedure." "Absolutely. Lily, babe, sign it. Mom is setting us up for life." Lily hesitated for a fraction of a second. She looked at me. "Mom, really? After yesterday?" "I just want you to be happy, Lily," I said softly. "And I want you to be honest. As long as you have nothing to hide, this money is yours." Nothing to hide. The trap was set. If they had a shred of conscience, or even a shred of caution, they would have read Clause 4. Clause 4. The signatories certify under penalty of perjury that they hold no debts exceeding $10,000 and grant the trustee, Julian Sterling, immediate, irrevocable power of attorney to audit all existing accounts to verify solvency before funds are released. But greed is a blinder. Caleb signed his name with a flourish. Caleb Reed. He shoved the paper to Lily. "Sign it, babe. Hurry," Lily signed. Lily Cross-Reed. The ink was barely dry when I snatched the folder back. "Wonderful," I said, snapping it shut. "I'll have this processed immediately." I turned to walk away. "Wait," Caleb called out. When does the transfer happen? Can we get a copy?" "To show the bank?" "Soon," I said vaguely. I walked 5 steps away from the dais, towards the shadows where Julian Sterling was waiting. I handed him the folder. He checked the signatures. He nodded. "Got 'em," Julian whispered. "Perjury, fraud, and consent for the audit. I'm freezing the Cayman account now." But the show wasn't over. Silas stepped out from behind a pillar. He caught the eye of the resort general manager, Mr. Rossi, who had been waiting nervously by the kitchen doors. Silas gave a sharp nod. It was time for the second act. Mr. Rossi, a stout man with a clipboard and zero patience, marched straight up to the head table. He ignored the guests. He ignored the cameras. "Mr. Reed," Rossi said, his voice cutting through the chatter. Caleb looked up, sweat beading on his forehead again. "Not now, Rossi. We're in the middle of a transaction decline." Rossi interrupted loudly. "I just attempted to run the final charge for the venue, catering, and bar services. $142,000. The room went silent again. This time, it wasn't a reverent silence. It was the awkward, horrified silence of a scandal unfolding in real time. "It declined," Rossi stated flatly. "I tried your backup card. Declined. I tried the corporate card. Invalid." Caleb laughed nervously, patting his pockets. "That's ridiculous. I must have hit a daily limit. It's a security feature. Big money problems, right?" He looked at me. "Mom," he called out, desperation leaking into his voice. "Mom, tell him. You just gave us $500,000. Tell him we're good for it." All eyes turned to me. Lily stood up, tears welling in her eyes. "Mom, please. Fix this. It's humiliating." This was the moment I had driven 3 hours for. I walked back to the table slowly. I stood between Mr. Rossi and the newlyweds. "Mr. Rossi," I said calmly, "is there a problem?" "The bill hasn't been paid, Dr. Cross," Rossi said. "And per our contract, if payment isn't received by 6 p.m., we stop service. That means the bar closes, the music stops, and security escorts the party off the premises." "Mom, pay him," Caleb hissed, leaning over the table. "Use the gift. Write him a check from the $500,000. I looked at Caleb. Then I looked at the blue folder in Julian's hands. "I can't do that, Caleb," I said. "Why not?" "Because you just signed a legal document certifying that you have no debts," I said, my voice projecting clearly to the back of the room. "If you can't pay this bill, it means you do have a debt. It means you are insolvent." Caleb froze. "If I pay this bill for you," I continued, "I would be complicit in fraud. You just swore under penalty of perjury that you were financially stable. Are you telling me you lied?" "It's just a bill!" Caleb screamed, losing control. "Stop playing games. Give me the money." "The money isn't yours yet." Julian Sterling stepped forward, his voice like a gavel strike. "And it never will be." Julian walked into the light. The guests gasped. Many recognized him. He was famous on the nightly news. "Who is he?" Lily asked, trembling. "I am the trustee of the gift you just signed for," Julian said smoothly. "And under the authority you just granted me in Clause 4, I have flagged a suspicious transaction in your accounts. Specifically, a transfer of $250,000 to Viper Holdings in the Cayman Islands. Caleb's face turned gray, the color of ash. You checked? I did, Julian nodded. And since that money is suspected to be proceeds of wire fraud against Dr. Cross, I have issued a freeze order on it. The bank in the Caymans has already complied. Cooperation with the FBI is swift these days. FBI? Lily squeaked. We'll get to that, I said. I turned to Mr. Rossi. Mr. Rossi, I am sorry to inform you that the groom is bankrupt. He cannot pay your bill. Then the party is over, Rossi snapped. He signaled to his staff. The lights in the ballroom flickered on harsh, bright, fluorescent cleaning lights that killed the romantic mood instantly. The music stopped abruptly with a screech of a needle. Waiters stopped pouring champagne and started clearing glasses. Mom! Lily wailed, mascara running down her face. You're ruining my wedding! No, Lily, I said, looking at her with pity. I'm saving you from a federal indictment. Or I'm trying to. I pointed at the main doors, because the guests aren't the only ones who arrived late. Through the double doors walked 4 men. They weren't wearing tuxedos. They were wearing windbreakers with yellow letters on the back. FBI. And behind them, 2 uniformed officers. Caleb saw them. He didn't look at Lily. He didn't look at me. He looked at the side exit, the glass doors leading to the cliffside terrace. He ran. He's running! Silas shouted, dropping his act and sprinting after him. The guests screamed. Chairs were knocked over. It was chaos. It was beautiful. The sound of a wedding imploding is unique. It starts with a gasp, swells into a murmur, and finally erupts into a symphony of screaming, shattered glass, and the heavy thud of boots on marble. When Caleb ran, he didn't look like a dashing groom making a dramatic exit. He looked like a rat scurrying from a sinking ship. He bolted toward the terrace doors, knocking over a waiter carrying a tray of untouched hors d'oeuvres. Shrimp cocktails and tartare sauce splattered across the silk dress of a bridesmaid, who shrieked as if she'd been shot. "Get him!" Silas roared. My brother didn't run like a 60-year-old man. He moved with the terrifying efficiency of a soldier who had hunted targets through jungles and deserts. He vaulted over a low floral arrangement and tackled Caleb just as his hand touched the door handle. They crashed into a decorative ice sculpture of a swan. The sculpture shattered. Ice shards rained down like diamonds, mixing with the spilled champagne on the floor. "Get off me! Get off me!" Caleb screamed, his face pressed against the wet floor. "I have anxiety! You're hurting me! I'll sue!" "You have the right to remain silent," an FBI agent said, stepping over the debris to slap handcuffs on Caleb's wrists. The metal clicked shut with a sound that echoed through the stunned ballroom. "I suggest you use it, Mr. Reed." Or should I say, Mr. Vance? I stood perfectly still at the head table. To my left, Lily was frozen. Her mouth hung open, her mascara smudged, her hands clutching the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. She wasn't looking at Caleb. She was looking at the guests. Every single person in the room had their phone out. Flashes were going off. The influencers, the friends she had invited to envy her, were now broadcasting her humiliation to the world. "Oh, Mag, the groom is getting arrested." Is that the FBI? Wait, did her mom just expose them for fraud? "Make them stop," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. Then she screamed, a high, piercing sound that made the chandelier vibrate. "Make them stop!" She lunged at a guest in the front row, a girl named Chloe who was live streaming on TikTok. Lily knocked the phone out of Chloe's hand. "Nobody is going anywhere," the lead FBI agent announced, his voice booming. "This is now an active crime scene. We need statements." Julian Sterling stepped forward, cool as a cucumber amidst the pandemonium. He walked over to where Silas was hauling Caleb to his feet. Caleb's tuxedo was soaked in melted ice water. His nose was bleeding. "Caleb Reed," Julian said, looking down at him with distaste. "You are under arrest for wire fraud, bank fraud, aggravated identity theft, and money laundering. And thanks to the document you signed 5 minutes ago, we also have you for federal perjury." "It was her!" Caleb shouted, spitting blood. He twisted his head to point at Lily. The room gasped. "What?" Lily whispered. "It was her idea!" Caleb yelled, his eyes wild with panic. "She wanted the wedding. She knew about the money. She told me to take it from the old lady's account. She said her mom was senile and wouldn't notice. I'm just the boyfriend. She's the mastermind." I watched my daughter's face. I saw the exact moment her heart broke. It wasn't when I exposed the debt. It wasn't when the FBI burst in. It was now. The man she had stolen for, the man she had betrayed her own mother for, was throwing her to the wolves to save his own skin. "You liar!" Lily shrieked, picking up a heavy silver candelabra from the table. "I gave you everything. I stole for you." "Whoa, easy!" Silas stepped in, grabbing Lily's wrist before she could swing the heavy metal object at Caleb. "That's assault on a federal prisoner, Lily. Don't add to the list." Silas gently took the candelabra from her and guided her back to her chair. She collapsed into it, sobbing uncontrollably into her custom Vera Wang gown. Mr. Rossi, the resort manager, decided this was the perfect time to assert his authority. "Cut the power to the DJ booth!" He barked into his radio. "Security, clear the buffet!" Nobody eats until this bill is settled. Waiters immediately started snatching plates away from guests. A team of staff began dismantling the flower arch. "Hey, I was eating that!" a guest protested. "Sue the groom," a waiter snapped back, taking a half-eaten lobster tail. I walked over to Lily. She looked up at me. Her eyes were red, swollen, and filled with a mixture of hatred and terror. "You did this!" she hissed. "Are you happy now? You destroyed my life. You humiliated me in front of everyone." "I didn't destroy your life, Lily," I said calmly, pouring myself a glass of water from a pitcher that hadn't been confiscated yet. "I popped the blister. It hurts, I know. But the infection is gone." "Infection?" She laughed hysterically. "He was my husband. For 10 minutes, he was my husband." "He was a parasite," I corrected. "And you were the host. And now, thanks to him implicating you loudly in front of federal agents, you are an accessory." "I didn't know about the loan sharks," Lily cried. "I just thought he was bad with money." "But you knew about the $250,000, I said softly. "You knew you took my retirement. You knew you emptied the joint account. That wasn't Caleb, Lily. That was you. You typed the password. You hit transfer." Lily went silent. She looked around the room. The guests were being herded by agents for statements. The dream wedding looked like a war zone. "What happens now?" she whispered, her voice small. "Now?" I said. "You face the consequences. For the first time in your life." Julian walked over to us. He looked serious. "Vivian," he said, "the agents are taking Caleb downtown for processing. But because Caleb just accused Lily of being a co-conspirator, they have to take her in for questioning, too." "What?" Lily jumped up. "No, I'm the bride. You can't arrest the bride." "They aren't arresting you yet," Julian said. "They are detaining you. But Lily, if they find one text message, one email proving you knew about the loan shark or the fake business, you're going to prison." 2 female agents approached the table. "Lily Cross Reed?" one asked. "It's just Cross," I interjected. "She hasn't filed the marriage certificate yet, and, given the circumstances, I doubt she will." "Miss Cross, please come with us," the agent said. Lily looked at me. For a second, I saw the little girl who used to scrape her knee and run to me for a bandage. "Mom?" she pleaded. "Help me. Please. Don't let them take me. I'm scared." This was the hardest part. Every instinct in my body screamed to call Julian off, to pay the bail, to hire the best defense team money could buy. But then I looked at the empty bank account in my mind. I looked at the sneer she had given me on the terrace when she said I was just an ATM. I looked at the guests she cared more about than her own mother. "I can't help you, Lily," I said, my voice cracking just slightly. "I am a witness for the prosecution." Lily's jaw dropped. "You're testifying. Against me?" "I'm testifying to the truth," I said. "Go with them. Tell the truth. It's the only currency you have left." The agents took her by the arms. They didn't handcuff her, but they marched her out of the ballroom, past the staring guests, past the ruined cake, and out the double doors. She looked back once. I didn't look away. I stood tall. I let her see me watching her leave. Once she was gone, the adrenaline finally left my body. My knees felt weak. I sat down in the chair Caleb had vacated. Silas sat next to me and handed me a cigarette. "I don't smoke," I said. "Today, you might want to start," he muttered. "Did we win?" I asked, looking at the wreckage of the wedding. Silas looked at the FBI agents bagging Caleb's laptop. He looked at Mr. Rossi shouting at his staff. He looked at the empty doorway where Lily had vanished. "Caleb is gone," Silas said. "Your money is frozen and will be returned. The leech is detached, but the patient is in critical condition," I finished. "Yeah," Silas sighed, "but she's alive. That's more than she would have been if she went to Dubai with that psycho." Julian packed up his briefcase. "I'll head to the station," he said. "I'll make sure Lily gets a public defender. I won't represent her conflict of interest, but I'll make sure she doesn't say anything stupid without a lawyer." "Thank you, Julian," I said. "Don't thank me yet," Julian warned. "The fallout is just beginning. The press is going to eat this up." I looked at the table. The deed of gift lay there, forgotten. I picked it up. The signature Caleb Reed was scrawled in confident, arrogant ink. I tore the paper in half, then in quarters. I dropped the pieces into a half-empty glass of champagne. The ink began to bleed, turning the expensive golden liquid into a murky, gray sludge. "Let's go home, Silas," I said. "I have a feeling tomorrow is going to be a very long day." "Chauban, dai la. Lun viet tu, qua phn 4. Kazan 4, never see, Kazan 4. Never see, trongfanai, kunbauda di qua. De lai mod hien, trung tan hoang kave vut chut, lentinthan. Chung ta se di so vau kai jia qua chin thang. Ki vivian fi doi mat, voi su tan nung qua du lun, va su trung rung trong ching goi namin. Do dai. To 1.1 Tunsu. Script Part 4. The Red Wedding. The Truth Revealed. The ballroom emptied slowly, like a theater after a bad play. The police had taped off the area where Caleb crashed into the ice sculpture. It looked ridiculous yellow crime scene tape wrapped around melting ice and spilled shrimp cocktail. The guests, the influencers, the hangers-on, the people Lily wanted so desperately to impress, didn't leave with sympathy. They left with content. I saw them huddled in small groups by the valet stand, their faces illuminated by the blue light of their phones, typing furiously. They weren't calling their families to say they were safe. They were updating their captions. "Look at this," Silas said, thrusting his phone into my hand. He had pulled up Twitter. X. The hashtag number scam wedding was trending. I scrolled. It was a digital massacre. Just watched the groom get arrested for fraud live. Best wedding ever. The mom is a savage. She literally brought receipts to the toast. at Lily Lux isn't a victim, she's a co-conspirator. Look at her old posts flexing the stolen money. I felt a wave of nausea. I had exposed the fraud to save my finances, but in doing so, I had nuked my daughter's reputation. The internet is forever. Lily wasn't just broke, she was a pariah. She wanted to be famous, I whispered, handing the phone back to Silas. She got her wish. Julian Sterling approached us, snapping his briefcase shut. The sound echoed in the empty hall. The agents have taken them to the Federal Detention Center downtown, Julian reported. Caleb is being charged with everything in the book. Lily is being held as a material witness and potential accessory. Will she stay in jail tonight? I asked. Julian looked at me over the rim of his glasses. That depends on you, Vivian. Me? Her bail hearing will be Monday morning. Until then, she sits in a holding cell. Unless what? Unless you hire a defense attorney immediately to petition for an emergency release. I can make a call. I know a guy who owes me, but it will cost you $10,000 up front. The room seemed to tilt. My daughter, my little girl, sleeping on a metal cot, wearing an orange jumpsuit, scared, alone. I reached for my purse. The checkbook was right there. I could fix this. I had always fixed this. When she crashed her first car? Checkbook. When she failed a semester of college? Checkbook. But then I looked at the ruined wedding cake, a 6-tier monstrosity that cost more than my first car. I looked at the deed of gift scraps dissolving in the champagne glass. If I bailed her out now, what would she learn? That mommy always cleans up the mess. That consequences are for poor people, not for her. I closed my purse. The snap of the clasp was loud in the silence. No, I said. Julian raised an eyebrow. No? Let her sit, I said, my voice trembling slightly but hardening with resolve. She needs to feel the cold steel of that bench, Julian. She needs to understand that this isn't a glitch or a hater problem. This is reality. It's a weekend in lockup, Silas warned. It's gonna be rough, Viv. She stole $250,000 from the woman who gave her life, I said. A weekend in lockup is a mercy compared to what the loan sharks would have done to her if they fled to Dubai. Julian nodded slowly. Understood. I'll make sure she has legal counsel present for questioning so she doesn't incriminate herself further, but I won't post bail. Thank you, Julian. Go home, Vivian, the lawyer said gently. The surgery is over. Now you just have to wait for the pathology report. The drive home was excruciating. Silas offered to drive, but I needed the control. I needed to grip the steering wheel until my hands hurt. It was dark. The coastal highway was empty. Usually, after a long surgery, I would feel a sense of accomplishment. A life saved. A tumor removed. Tonight, I felt like I had amputated my own limb to stop gangrene from spreading. The patient would live, yes, but I would never be whole again. I pulled into my driveway at 11 p.m. The house was dark. I walked inside and disarmed the security system. The beep, beep, beep sounded deafening. I turned on the lights in the foyer. There, on the console table, was a framed photo of Lily and me. It was taken at her high school graduation. She was beaming, wearing her cap and gown, her arm draped around my shoulder. I looked so proud. I'm going to make you proud, Mom. She had written on the back. I picked up the photo. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine. I sat in the dark, staring at the picture. My phone buzzed. A notification from the bank. Julian Sterling. Trustee. Freeze order executed. $250,000 held in Cayman Intermediary Bank. Return of funds initiated. I had won. My money was safe. My future was secure. I looked around my beautiful, empty house. I had the money, but I had lost the daughter in the picture. The girl in the photo didn't exist anymore. She had been consumed by the woman who stood on a terrace and called me an ATM. The tears finally came. Not the polite, silent tears I had shed in the past. These were ugly, racking sobs. I cried for the little girl who loved snails. I cried for the woman who loved a con artist. I cried for the emptiness of a mother's love when it hits a wall of greed. I cried until my chest ached. Then, the doorbell rang. It startled me. Who would come here at midnight? I wiped my face and checked the security camera on my phone. It wasn't a reporter. It wasn't the police. It was Silas. He was standing on the porch, holding a greasy paper bag. I opened the door. "I figured you wouldn't eat," Silas said, walking in without asking. "So I went to that 24-hour diner on Route 9. Got you a grilled cheese and tomato soup, your comfort food." He set the bag on the kitchen table and sat down. "I saw the lights were off," he said gruffly. "Didn't want you sitting in the dark." I sat opposite him. I opened the container. The soup was still warm. "She's going to hate me forever, Silas," I whispered. "Maybe," Silas shrugged, unwrapping his own sandwich. "Or maybe, for the first time in her life, she's going to respect you. You didn't just save your money today, Viv. You saved her from becoming Caleb. She was already becoming him." "Nah," Silas shook his head. "Caleb is a sociopath. Lily is just weak and entitled. Those things are curable. Prison is a hell of a rehab." We ate in silence for a while. The simple, salty taste of the grilled cheese grounded me. "What happens next?" I asked. "Monday, the arraignment," Silas said. "The press will be there. It's going to be a circus." "You need to be ready." "I'll be there," I said. "I'm the witness." "You're the mother," Silas corrected. "Don't forget that part. You can testify against the crime without hating the criminal." I looked at the empty wine glass. Silas was right. I had cut out the tumor. Now came the chemotherapy, the long, painful process of trying to kill the bad cells without killing the patient. I picked up my phone again. I opened Instagram. I went to Lily's profile. The comments were vicious. People telling her to die. People mocking her dress. For a moment, I wanted to delete her account, but I didn't. I let it stay. She needed to see this. She needed to burn, because only from the ashes can a phoenix rise. And if she was truly my daughter, if she had even a drop of my blood, my resilience, my steel, she would survive the fire. "Silas," I said, standing up. "Yeah?" "Call Julian. Tell him to meet me at the courthouse Monday morning. I have a condition for her bail." "You're going to bail her out?" "No," I said, my eyes narrowing. "I'm going to offer her a plea deal, my own plea deal. She gets out, but only if she pleads guilty to stupidity and agrees to my terms." "What terms?" I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Rehab," I said. "Financial rehab. She wants to be an adult? Fine. She's going to start from scratch. Minimum wage. No phone. No internet. And she pays me back every single cent of the interest I lost." Silas chuckled. "That sounds worse than prison." "It is," I agreed. "It's called growing up." It has been 8 months since the red wedding. 8 months since I watched my future son-in-law tackled into an ice sculpture and my daughter marched out by federal agents. Caleb didn't get a plea deal. With his record and the sheer scale of the fraud involving the loan sharks, the judge was merciless. He is currently serving a 12-year sentence in a medium-security federal prison. I heard he tried to start a crypto trading class for inmates. It didn't end well. As for Lily, she spent 3 nights in that holding cell. When she finally stood before the judge on Monday morning, she looked different. The fake eyelashes were gone. The arrogance was gone. She looked like a scared child who had finally touched a hot stove. Julian Sterling worked his magic. Because she cooperated fully and testified against Caleb, she avoided prison time, but she didn't avoid my sentence. Per our agreement, Lily is currently under financial rehabilitation. She lives in a studio apartment that I pay for directly to the landlord. No cash touches her hands. She works as a receptionist at a dental clinic. It's not glamorous. Nobody is taking photos of her filing paperwork or answering phones. Her Instagram account is deactivated. She earns $18 an hour. And every month, she writes me a check for $200. At this rate, it will take her 104 years to pay back the interest on the stress she caused me. But the money isn't the point. The discipline is. Last week, I met her for coffee. She arrived wearing jeans and a simple sweater. No designer logos, no ring light. She looked tired, but when she smiled at me, it reached her eyes. "I got a raise, Mom," she said, sliding an envelope across the table. "They bumped me to $19 an hour. Here's an extra $50 this month." I took the envelope. It was heavier than the $250,000 check she tried to steal. Because this money was earned, not taken. "Are you happy?" I asked her. Lily looked out the window. "I'm tired," she admitted. "But I sleep better. I don't have to pretend to be rich anymore. It's quiet." She reached out and took my hand. Her grip was firm. "Thank you," she whispered. "For not bailing me out. Caleb would have dragged me to Dubai. I would be dead or in a foreign prison right now." "You're welcome," I said, squeezing her hand back. It was the hardest surgery I ever performed. As for me, I sold the big house. It felt too large for one person. I bought a penthouse in the city, close to the art galleries and the symphony. Silas comes over on Sundays to watch football. Julian joins us sometimes for scotch. We are a strange little family, a soldier, a lawyer, and a retired surgeon, but we protect our own. I still have my retirement fund. I still have my dignity, but most importantly, I have my daughter back. Not the influencer Lily Lux, but Lily, the girl who is learning to stand on her own 2 feet. They say you can't choose your family. That's true, but you can choose what you tolerate from them. You can choose to close the bank of mom. You can choose to say no so that one day their yes actually means something. I lost a wedding, but I saved a life. And looking at the peace in my daughter's eyes today, I know I made the right call. What about you? Have you ever had to use tough love to save someone you cared about? Did they hate you for it? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of justice and resilience. Until next time, protect your peace.